There's a difference between mocap and full performance capture. So performance capture is usually face, head, body, voice, usually is either as a scratch track for another actor to come in, or as the final version with ADR backup for the actor. Mocap, traditionally how it started, because the technology wasn't there to do HMCs as such, was always head, a body, usually without hands. So it was just the head and the body. That's why motion capture is slightly different to performance capture. Mocap is usually to do with stunts, combat, blending, that kind of stuff, locomotion. Performance capture is usually to do with cinematics and more involved pieces in terms of like detail of the character, the voice, and matching up face to voice, all that kind of stuff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tell Me About, the show where I have a lot of questions, and thankfully, I've got friends and colleagues who have answers. Today, I wanted to bring on someone who not only is an amazing actor, both in film and in television, but also, I think more importantly for us in this context, video games. You might know him from his work as Astarion in Baldur's Gate 3, or maybe further back from Detroit Become Human, or Resident Evil, or even Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2. But today, we're not going to focus on the voice acting side of things, but instead, motion capture or full performance capture. Because I wanted to learn about it from someone who has genuinely mastered the craft and get an inside look as to what goes on there, what running a production's like, what filming it's like, and more importantly, what it is like as an actor in that space. So joining us today, you know him, you love him, Neil Newbon. Thanks so much for coming by.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for the invitation. So an interesting caveat to what you're saying, actually. I personally prefer the term acting as opposed to voice acting. And let me tell you why, because also motion capture also bleeds into this as well. I will see all of it as acting, it's all performance. So I don't tend to diminish one part or the other. Voice work is a thing, obviously motion capture work is a thing. But personally, I'm trying to change the industry by my little conversations I have with people about trying to get their heads around the idea that game actors are on the same tier as film, TV, theatre actors. It's all the same thing. It's all acting. Different technicalities, of course, different challenges and givens, but ultimately it's all acting. So voice acting for me doesn't really exist. Voice work exists, but it's all actors doing it, whether or not they're in front of the camera most of the time or not. But yeah, so I'd love to talk to you about it. It was a life-changing experience. It's been, as well as a career-changing experience. It literally changed my life, which is hence why I have some tattoos about it, actually. But I got my tattoos. I mean, I like tattoos anyway. I've got quite a few, but these particular ones were the three of them, which is actually I managed to get Rich Best from the Imaginarium to say yes, to use their placement. These were really to honour my involvement with the work and to really meditate on the experience I've had for the last 28, 29 years of being an actor in film, TV, radio, theatre, and motion capture, performance capture, and voice work. In games, animation, TV, like pretty much everything, really. Weirdly, I don't think I've ever done a audiobook. It's like the only thing I haven't done. Pornography I haven't done either. So pornography and audiobooks are the only things I haven't done as an actor.
If you do audiobook pornography, you cross
I should
it
do
out,
that. That's what I should do. I should do audio. I can just 2 for 1. Yeah, two birds. Was it 2 birds in the bush? One. I don't know. Something like that. Whatever the point is, yes, I should do that. So yeah, I've been very lucky in that sense. I managed to try everything. I've been offered to be involved in all kinds of wonderful projects, and especially more so than anything really in games, because I think mocap is a very interesting thing. I remember when I was about to quit acting, I discovered mocap. It had been a thing for a while, but nobody knew about it, so it was not common knowledge at all. Even I had no idea what it was, except for when I saw a picture of it, I knew that it was like a weird mishmash, I felt, of theatre and film. And so for me, having come from both and having been an actor for some time at that point and trained a lot, I felt like I had something to offer in that space. I also, as a gamer, thought it was just very cool that, like, okay, you can actually be an actor in it. And I was very lucky. I got picked up immediately from the first audition I had with Audio Motion. Brian Mitchell, Stacey Boisel got me to come in for Ghost Recon Future Soldier. I auditioned for it. I got the role, so I started working with Ubisoft for about 3 weeks with US Navy SEALs and some other actors, which was pretty fucking awesome. And I quickly discovered that I had a propensity to it. I was very eager to learn. I also learned a lot of lessons from my less successful, TV and film career that I'd had up until that point. about like what not to do, how to remain professional, how to be on time, how to make sure that you're always in a state of readiness. So that luck is the residue of design is a great expression, which means that to be lucky, you have to be prepared to be lucky, which means you have to train, you have to be disciplined, you have to focus on your craft, you have to sometimes make sacrifices. For that, you have to also be humble. I feel you have to be grateful for the stuff you do. You can't be a dick. You shouldn't be a dick anyway, but you know what I mean? You can't be a dickhead. So for me, a lot of it was really like having learned these hard lessons sometimes, necessary lessons probably. I took that into the new work, and the new work allowed me to take my face off. I could play 20 characters in one day. We were thrown like, stunts, combat, creature work, acting work, which is all performance. The thing is, all of it's performance. That's the crazy thing. Like even like locomotion, in-game mechanics, motion matching, building, all that kind of stuff. It's all performance. So for an actor or anybody in a performance space, that's the gift of it, is that it doesn't make a difference what aspect you're doing. It's all valid, it's all performance. And also it's nice. The environments tend to be, I think all of the times I've been in the volume, they tend to be really wonderful experiences. I've definitely had a couple of challenging moments where I felt the director didn't really understand animation. And so we had to do things that quite frankly were a little unnecessary and felt very much like they want it perfect in their heads, but they don't realize that they don't need it to be exactly like that. They can do this and they can manipulate and do all kinds of things with it. So maybe like once or twice out of 16 years, I felt, okay, that was a lot. But we were doing the up to 16-hour days sometimes, and they were some of the best days I ever had. I worked with Quantic Dream with Brian Dickart and myself. Clancy Brown was there at the time as well. And we had a blast. We had an amazing shoots there, and those were long days full of a lot of stuff. And they were some of the best work I think I've ever done. Over the last, certainly over the last almost 30 years, I think a lot of the best work I've done has been in the volume. That was a very long introduction, Neil. Well done.
No, that was great. I wanted to go back to something you had brought up about acting and how the term voice acting really probably doesn't apply in this case, and how this is acting is acting.
Acting is acting. Yeah. It's like you might say a film actor or a TV actor or a theatre actor or a game actor to understand the reference or the context of which you're talking about them. But I don't go, oh, this guy did body and voice in this film. Do you know what I mean? Or just, oh, this guy was just the voice of the film if there was a narrator or something. And even in animation, you don't really talk about like an A-list actor as being just the voice actor. You say that the actor Keanu Reeves, the actor Pedro Pascal, or whatever the thing is. You talk about them as actors, man. And that shouldn't be just because they have very high status. It should be a respect thing. I think it's a reductive term because it's an old-fashioned term, and it usually comes with some givens of, we're not paid the same. That is true. We're absolutely not paid the same. There are some wonderful benefits of doing things like conventions and stuff, which you can do, which are very accessible to game actors, especially now. But, by and large, we're absolutely not paid the same. I'd probably be a multi-millionaire having done the number of works I've done. But that's okay. It's a different part of the industry. It's a newer part of the industry. What I do feel should be the same is the respect level, especially now that we see storytelling on a par with game narrative, but also on a par with TV, film. And easily some of the best stories in the last 5 years, I would say, have been games, more so than television in some respects, I would say. In fact, HBO stuff, you've seen The Last of Us, we've seen Fallout. These are games. These are games for 20, 30 years in some cases that are now being faithfully translated to television and are amazing because they've been true to the game. Do you know what I mean? So I think all of this kind of bleeds into the fact that, okay, we may not be paid the same. You should definitely treat us the same in terms of respect for the craft that goes, because it's not an easy job. It's a fun job. It's a super fun job, but it's hard bloody work. And I think that's a big thing that I think I'm trying to strive for, is to make people understand that it's all acting, it's all performance, which also means that it's accessible to everybody. Game work should be accessible to any actor that wants to try it, as opposed to the old days where it was, a little interesting at times, lots of shouting, lots of very big, very big performances, let's say,
You bring up a great point. I think if anyone watches any actor in a booth performing a character, be it to a microphone or some other setup, they're emoting, they're moving, they're getting into that character in a way that is much more than what I'm doing right now, just talking into a microphone.
Yeah, there's a great example I have actually on my own career that I worked on Final Fantasy Kingsglaive. I did 2 roles for that, as well as a whole bunch of combat and background people and world building stuff as well. I was the performance capture for Nyx, and I was the full performance capture actor for Captain Petra. So I did the voice as well as all the combat and all the face stuff and all the body stuff as well. And interesting enough, they didn't know who they wanted for the voice of Nyx. They just knew it had to be an A-list celebrity for the clout. Obviously they needed that for the size of the role as well, which is fair enough. And they were very lucky. They got the wonderfully talented Aaron Paul. Takeshi Nizuru-san, who was the director of that, who is an amazing person, and I had a huge amount of respect for him, but also a huge amount of gratitude towards him for even hiring me in the first place. He was amazing because he did something which I'd never seen before at that point. He put the actors that did the voice work and the actors that did the full performance capture, he put them together, double billed for each role. And I remember asking him that because he told us that. I remember thinking, wow, that's extraordinary. And he said, well, both you and him, and both everybody's role and the voice, if they didn't do the voice and everything together, which a few people did, but you all contributed to this character. And he felt very particularly moved to honor that, which I thought he didn't have to. I mean, it's literally completely on a whim that he did that. But the fact that he did think about it and do that was a really wonderful moment for me. It was back in 2015, 16, I think it was. So for me, it felt like, yeah, that's legitimacy. That's like, yeah, what we do is performance. And the fact that my nuance and my subtleties went into the performance, and then Aaron Paul's amazing talent and nuance and subtleties went into his choice as well, and the two things blended together, is just awesome. I think that's a really, it's a really cool aspect of the work. You can have 5 people play one role, for instance. You can have an actor does the voice work. You can have an actor does the motion capture, an actor does the combat and stunts, the actor does a special skill. Maybe the actor that does is actually who it looks like is somebody else that got scanned for the role because they have a really interesting look. You can have all these different aspects of different people go to create one role if you wanted to, or you can have one actor do the entire thing. It's really interesting. What it also means is that you get to take your face off, which for people like me was a blessing. Up until that point, I had a very difficult time trying to get cast for anything other than certain types of casting, which is natural, but very boring after a while. Because you don't really feel stretched. You feel like you're stepping into the same role over and over again. So I got lucky. I'm a character actor, so I got to be a character actor. Not necessarily the first time in my career, but definitely one of, at that point, it was quite rare that people would cast me against type, which was a wonderful experience a few times that I had in film and TV. So yeah, I mean, mocap is an interesting thing. It is theatre and film. I feel that to compete these days, especially the number of people going into it, because originally when we were doing it, there was like 10 or 12 of us, about 16 years ago. There weren't that many people in the whole of the UK. Now there are hundreds of people going up for each role. I have a production company. We do castings in-house sometimes. Or we hire the wonderful Jessica Jeffries, an amazing casting director as well. We look at hundreds and hundreds of people just for one role. And it's, it goes to show how it's fundamentally changed now, that you will have a lot of people submitting for games. The younger generations enjoy games, they play games, they think acting in games is cool, and it resonates with people as well because it's an active storytelling medium. So you have this fundamental shift in the industry where for a long time it wasn't given any recognition. Now, I got BAFTA nominated for my role as Astarion. I won a Game Award in front of 122 million people. It's fucking insane. So there is a huge shift now. And I think with that, the people that were previously unknown mocap actors, etc., are now getting their dues and props, which is wonderful to see that. Because ultimately, like I say again, it's all performance.
Will you walk me through the process overall for not just casting, but production and pre-production? Because I'm thinking, okay, you definitely having the production company and the space and the experience, having done a lot of mocap. Obviously, a company has an idea of what game they want to make and where to go from there.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Step 1 through the end, what is that like? Because I have to imagine are you the actor for the character, or are you the actor for the physicality of the character and then someone else is coming in and doing the voice? Like, there's a lot of layers to it. And so what would the process from jump be for a production?
I think a lot of it comes down to budget and requirements. So for instance, if you are our production company is doing game, I won't mention details obviously, but we're doing one of the projects we're on at the moment. We have to find people with a multitude of skills, and it's highly unlikely you'll find the right actor with the right height and the right capabilities that does all of these different skills brilliantly. Instead, what we've been looking for is similar actors that have a certain vibe that we're looking for, that meet the kind of frame requirements that are needed, height specifically. Body frame isn't so much an issue. The height is, because the scaling can cost a lot of money, for instance. So with those parameters, we're now looking at people that does a bunch of stuff, but maybe not everything. So you have all these different actors all coming in to bleed into these kind of roles. That's one version of it. Another might be, let's take Baldur's Gate, for instance, where I was hired to do full performance capture. So everything you see as Astarion is me, with a few minor blending things that I was also on the team that did the motion. I was also a motion capture actor that did the blending and did some extra like combat-y things and extra additions, as were the many animators of Larian who also jumped into suits to do that. But with Astarion, it was essentially me, which was great, and also even looked like me a little bit, which was nice. So there was a lot of requirements to really get the actors to own their characters physically in the space, as you would do on film or theatre for that matter. And that was 258 of us approximately. I think it's probably a few up or down from that, but it's around 258 actors, not including Larian animators, not including the 8 of us that were on the mocap team in Guildford to work with the amazing people there. There were, there's a lot of fucking actors, man. That's another way of doing it. Equally, you could have had like just a small number of actors do everything, and then a bunch of actors doing voice only. Or another job, you might want to do full performance capture, so everybody's in there and everybody's scanned. But it really depends on the requirements. It also depends on the shoots. How many shoots can you do? If you're doing mocap at all, because sometimes you can't afford that, or sometimes you can't afford the small hit. You have to stretch out the budget over a long period of time. So maybe keyframe animation is a better shout to do, and just doing voice work. It really depends. I personally love PCAP. From a production point of view, I love it because you get this authenticity of movement, and you get the reality, and you avoid uncanny valley and all that kind of stuff. It's also really fun for the actor, especially when they understand what you're trying to do. They can really jump into space and start improvising those happy accidents, which you can do as an actor in a voice booth. It's a little different though, obviously. You're a bit more constrained in that way. So let's say you have an idea of what you want to do. You want to do full performance capture, and then you also maybe want another team to do stunts, combat, or what have you. You might have a stunt team exclusively focused on that if it's very heavy. So the casting will be very similar to a film and television casting. You'll do a self-tape call out. So our casting director will send out hundreds, if not thousands of tapes, depending on how many roles there are, to all of the major acting agents, and sometimes independent people as well that don't have representation but are known in the space. They then self-tape. The self-tapes may be a scene. It might be a scene and some locomotion movements, which might be walking to camera, walking away from camera, like a walk cycle, or it might be showing off combat skills or shooting skills using prop guns or toys or what have you. With a breakdown of what we're looking for, usually a fake script, usually a project fake name, almost always. That way you don't have to worry about NDA or people talking about it because it doesn't make any sense, it's not directly related. And those scripts are very much curated to feel like what you're going for, but it will hardly ever be the final thing. There are exceptions to that. When I get hired on by people that I've worked with before who know me and trust me, I may get the full script, or at least my portion of it, for the audition that they want, or rather the screen test or demo equivalent they want to do. Especially when you have like very, very rarely straight offers, which is a wonderful experience. It might be more of a case of just researching and developing a character with a team because they want you to do it anyway. So let's just say it's a traditional route. You do the casting, maybe get a recall. Hopefully there's an in-person recall. It's very useful to get a sense of the actor, but also for the actor to get a sense of the team, the director they're working with. You get to play in the room. I like auditioning. Actually, I used to hate it. I used to be terrified of it. And actually, I love it now because I think it's a wonderful place to work in. I show my work, which is great. And also, I'm fearless now. I've done everything, and I've fucked everything up in spectacular ways that you probably could do with an acting career over, the first 15 years of my work. So these last 15 years, the other 15 years, have been a great place to remember the mistakes I made and learn from them, which is what mistakes are there. Mistakes are there to be learned from. So now, if I was an actor going to audition, I would go, okay, here's the script. This is the facts of the character, what I know about them. This is what they say about other people. This is what other people say about them. If there's any of that information there, you start gleaning as much as possible. Start looking at their speech, how they talk, if there's any notes for accents, or if it's very open, or if there's a backstory, the bio of the character, the bio of the world, hopefully, or at least an indication of where it's heading, the tonality of the piece. And you start having fun at that point. So you're learning the lines independently. I don't learn lines by rote. I try to memorize them without any rhythm. I write them out basically anywhere from 50 to 100 times until I know the words. I just don't know how they're going to come out. That's an old school trick that I learned from a wonderful actor called Roy Treese many years ago. And Roy taught me that trick. It was just, you just write them out until you can just say them like blah, 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 blah. And at that point, you can really start working on the character. And then you start having fun and it depends on your methodology. So then you've done all of that work, none of which you get paid for. But it's all work, which is great. And it stretches you as an actor, I feel. And then you go to the audition or the self-tape, and then you send off the self-tape, maybe get the recall, you go in the room, and you still may not get the job. So after all those hours and hours and hours and hours of working, you may get nothing. But you didn't come in with anything, so you don't lose anything. And all you get to do is show your work. And if you do a really good audition and you still don't get the role, the casting director, writer, somebody will remember you for it. So that's why people should never, hold their hands up and go, oh, I'm not going to get this role, I shouldn't bother. Fuck that. You might actually get the next thing. It might be better than the thing you're going up for, which does happen. So at that point, the team goes away. The director may or may not confer, depending on how involved they are at that stage. The director should have a choice of the actors to some degree. The developers should be as well. There should be a conference about that between them. And at some point, they'll make a decision of their favorite picks. Maybe they do one more stage. Maybe they just do an interview where they just talk to you. Mainly to get you to talk to them so that they can work out who you are. And do they want to work with you? Are you crazy? Are you okay? Are you a dickhead? All that kind of stuff. Or are you just a really interesting person that they're going to vibe with? Do you get the role? Do you want to do the role? All that kind of stuff, And at that point, they'll be pretty certain of who they want. If not, they made a decision kind of subconsciously early, and they just went, oh, okay, this is definitely still the person that we really want. Yeah, great. And then you start doing the gig. That can take years.
So casting process done.
Mm-hmm.
The cast is there. Roles are filled. What is the process like of actually then acting in and capturing those characters?
Sure.
Because I imagine it would be similar to a movie in that you're not doing scenes in order.
Sure.
You're kind of doing blocks of stuff.
Yep, that's true.
But, how many takes are there? And what is the actual scene time? Are you doing a full scene, or are you doing parts of a scene put together? How does that all work?
It very much depends. So again, there's no one way of doing a game. There's no one way of doing narrative. Let's talk about cinematics specifically. So put locomotion, which is in-game movement, sort of pushing forward on a controller and somebody running, which is also often done by mocap. Let's push that to one side, because that's a whole different kettle of fish. You may play out cinematics linear. So you may have a start to finish a scene just like a movie. You start it, in an A pose or a T pose, which is a blend point and edit point. And then you go into the scene, you'd finish the scene, come out into a T pose or an A pose. And that would be shot very, very similar fashion to a movie. You'd have the number of scenes you're doing, which scenes you're doing every day, so you can prepare the night before. You may have narrative choices within the scene, which can change the scene. Maybe if it's a branching narrative game like Detroit Become Human, or Beyond Two Souls, or Planet of the Apes: Last Frontier, or Until Dawn, or all those kind of things, right? There's a whole bunch of different games out there, like Man of Medan, the Dark Anthology, the Arc Ashes Anthology, is it called?
Dark Pictures, yeah.
Dark Pictures, thank you, Dark Pictures. So all of those ones all have narrative choice within it. And those ones add on a whole nother level. So maybe you're doing a linear scene, and in the middle of it, you now have to do 3 different versions of what your character could do. And the scene may or may not continue in that vein, or it may go off on a branch. So you then have to start breaking it up into different pathways. Again, that's kind of pretty straightforward when you get your head around it. But I think the first time actors try that, it must be pretty fucking daunting. Because it's a multiverse. You can do your character in different situations. The good thing about it is that fundamentally, if the actor steps back and goes, do I know my character really well? If I know my character really well, I can rock and roll in any situation. If the context changes, I know how my character would react. So as long as the actor has done their work, has grounded themselves, even if it's day one, as long as you've done your work, the rehearsal work, which nobody needs to know what the fuck you did, because it's the most boring thing in the world when you turn up to set and somebody starts telling you their fucking process. It's so fucking dull. People don't do it. You shouldn't do it. I've had people ask me on set, oh, what are you doing this? It's like, I look at them like, Okay, I'll tell you, but I really don't want to talk about it. That's for press, that's for later, or for a teacher if I'm teaching or something. But yeah, that's the sort of process that can how it can be. Equally, like Baldur's Gate 3, we did it completely differently. We did isolation, so we were only by ourselves with the director. We may or may not have the feed lines in from pre-recorded stuff from the other actors. We don't know necessarily which of the people we're talking to. In fact, we don't know whether what the TAV looks like. So, that was a very different experience for 4.5 years, doing 4-hour stints. So there is no one way. There's a whole bunch of different ways that work really well, depending on what you need. Traditional shoot, Resident Evil Village, for instance, we shot them like scenes. They were relatively chronological, actually. We started with the first scene that I was involved in was the big family scene in the church. That was great because I got to meet the other villains. I don't like the term villain, you know what I mean?
Such good, behind the scenes footage of that is so funny.
It's so fun. Like I don't think I could still do it again, but my voice cracked in such a way that it sounded like machinery on machinery. It was fucking wild. And that was my very first scene I did for the shoot, and that's where first time I met Maggie Robertson in character. So we hadn't really said much to each other, but I met her as Lady D, and she met me as Heisenberg. Really, that was the most we talked to each other, and then we just immediately went to each other afterwards and just immediately became friends. And she's a really close friend now. But it's fun, and I think that's the other thing about mocap. It's so fun. It's super fun. And I think when people get their heads around the nervousness of what the fuck is this, when they see the joy of it, it's one of the best jobs they've probably ever been involved with. Most actors I've met that haven't done it before that come to it, they just fall in love with it. It's great. Because it is theatre. The camera can be anywhere. It's a wide and a close-up simultaneously. You're in the round like theatre. You may have a virtual camera. They may give you, the camera's going to be here, so we're going to line you up that way. They may not. They may not know. They may not even have a plan that's more than just a vague idea that the camera's over here somewhere. Because they can also shift you. So you can record something, they can move you in time and space. They can duplicate you. It's like 5 dimensions, man. They can, it's width, depth, height, the time, space, duplication, like multi-dimensional shit. It's wild. You can become a creature. You may be an alien and you may not even be a human. So you have prosthetics and digital makeup and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really exciting field to be a part of, and a highly creative environment as well, especially for problem solving. Because the other thing about it is that the environment is not there, like theatre. So you might have like an open flight of stairs, you might have a mesh table with a mesh chair, and you might have like a banana, which is supposed to represent a doomsday device or something like that. Not really a banana, but you get the idea. Something that looks banana-like, and it's supposed to be this all-powerful weapon. You're fighting with toy weapons. It's very silly on one level, but then if you imbue your imagination with it and you just go with it, you take it very seriously because it's actually, it's really good acting. It's really good fun. Yeah.
It's really nice to have you on to talk about all of this, because not only do you have, like you mentioned, the Resident Evil experience of doing it sort of as a scene, but also a great example you brought up in Detroit Become Human, you're this guy who made all the androids, and so you have a lot of possibilities of what could happen to your character, and so you had to do different scenes and stuff like that. And
we had to do the same scene repeatedly over and over and over again because of all the different choices. The swimming pool scene was one of my favorites because the writing was so good, and we just got to do it again and again and again. It was super fun. Sorry I interrupted you guys.
You brought up stage, screen, TV acting, and I think, each has their differences. If you're on stage, you got to go. There is no let's take a cut there, right? You're just acting.
Yeah.
And if you're on film, you have different options, but you're cutting, you're doing different angles, you're reshooting the scene 12 times.
Some people say the performances when there's a close-up or something, all that kind of stuff, yeah. That's why I prefer performance capture in some ways. I love film and TV and theatre. I've done theatre until film and TV, in the last 15 years too. I don't stop doing that. I'm just very busy at the moment, so it's hard to get the time to do TV and film, to be perfectly honest. But the thing about performance capture is that you're always on. Unless, the only time that I always tell people to sort of duck out the scene, because they can't leave the volume necessarily unless you're running out the volume for some reason, and even that kind of creates problems. What we do instead, I usually do, is just go to the edge and put my head down and just stay motionless like a statue, which means for me it's like I've left the scene now. Apart from that, you're always on. And also the data is being captured from every angle. So you could be used in a way that you don't know. So for me personally, the rule I always say is that The second you're in the volume, the second you hear action, until you hear cut, you are on. You have to imbue the life of the character with business. You have to, because it's active. Nobody's ever doing nothing. They're always doing something in the nothingness. Even if it's just like checking their nails, or even just breathing and just listening is still something. That's theatre. That's very much a theatre technique. You know, in film and TV, I've definitely seen situations where people walk past the camera and just immediately drop their character, which I think is a bit of a waste, because then the other character isn't playing off that much. Or worse, even, they have stand-ins to do the lines with the actor, which I think really fucking sucks. You know, not all due respect to a stand-in, but I want the actor I'm working with on screen to fucking be there when I'm doing my lines, you know what I mean? So for performance capture, there is no off. You cannot just escape out of the scene. You are in the volume the whole time you're shooting, whilst you're shooting that scene that you're involved with, which means you don't get to go anywhere, which means you're always on, which means everything's captured, which means you get to play in that space the whole time, unless you know, quote unquote, leave the scene. I love it because of that, because it feels, again, like theatre. Like you said, there's only one shot. Now, the good thing is you get a safety net of TV and film where you can do it again, because you can do multiple shoots, you can break up scenes, you can do a master and then come in for, like, you know, up until certain narrative choices, you could do like a chunk and then another chunk. So you get the safety net of that, but you also get the thrill, I feel, of being in a live performance on stage. So, you know, it's pretty interesting. I personally think it's the best of all worlds. Yeah, the only thing that I guess it isn't quite the same is we don't get paid as much. We get paid well, don't get me wrong, we get paid well. It's not the same as a film. If I was opening a film of the same level, I literally own islands now. You know what I mean? I'd be like so rich. But the good thing about all of this as well, for me personally, is that my aim for success was never money and fame. My aim for success was never having to do anything other than be an actor or creative ever again. I went really off topic. Man, I fucking rambled. That was a good one.
I love a good ramble. Yeah.
Sorry.
A lot of actors, when they get a script for the first time, like you had mentioned, they have their process and they'll go through the idea of learning it and then embodying the character and so on. And
the process is unique to each actor, by the way. There is no such thing as the right way. There is no such thing as the one thing that everybody should do always. No, it's whatever works. But yeah, carry on.
And in that relationship between the actor and the director and whatever production team is assembled, there's always that give and take of, here's the script versus, I think my character might actually say this now that I've embodied them. And there are many people who feel like, well, the script's the script, and that's what it is. And there are many people who are like, well, I'm going to make a few changes here or there. I'm not going to change the script. I want to add to it, to the character. And so I'm curious, when it comes to video game production, where is that line? Because I have to imagine they're thinking of translations and having it down the bottom of the screen and all that different stuff.
Translation's that's not so much of a bad thing, unless you're doing like a kind of pseudo dubbing to a Japanese or Korean where that's the original language. Then yes, you do have to fill in the timings because it's already been cut to that language, which does happen sometimes, where, especially in motion capture, where you're not capturing face or voice, it's just the body and head you're capturing. I should have defined it, actually, by the way. There's a difference between mocap and full performance capture. So performance capture is usually face, head, body, voice, usually is either as a scratch track for another actor to come in, or as the final version with ADR backup for the actor. Mocap, traditionally how it started, because the technology wasn't there to do HMCs as such, was always head, a body, usually without hands. So it's just the head and the body. That's why motion capture is slightly different to performance capture. Mocap is usually to do with stunts, combat, blending, that kind of stuff, locomotion. Performance capture is usually to do with cinematics and more involved pieces in terms of like detail of the character, the voice, and matching up face to voice and all that stuff. Anyway, going back to your question, which I've gone off topic, sorry. Remind me the question again, just so I can get back in there.
Sure. Well, the idea.
Oh yes, the script. I remember.
Scripting and the lines and taking chances with dialogue, and also more importantly, takes. Like, can you go kind of off the wall with some takes, or are you stuck doing one specific type?
No, it depends. Sometimes you have to be wedded to certain parts of the script because it's a game mechanic or it's something to do with the plot that has mechanics involved. You cannot change that. You must stick to that. Sometimes it's just about phraseology and sometimes it's even plot holes or mechanic plot holes that actually can cause problems. You may identify only when you're doing it and you realize the logic isn't quite right. That happens very rarely. Usually the team is very, very good about finding those kind of things. But sometimes when the actor owns a character, they might have great ideas, happy accidents. They might actually find that the turn of phrase doesn't really fit them because it's a new turn of phrase. And actually they might at that point go to the director, I kind of feel like this isn't quite right. And usually what they're looking for is the director to say, okay, let me explain something to you to help you get your head into it, or let me try, I actually do need this, so I kind of need you to find a way to get to this point. Or they might even say, you know what, that sounds better, actually, let's do that. It really depends on the actor, on the director, the script, and the mechanics. I guess the big difference is the mechanics are a thing in TV and film are not. But the script is really, some scripts are sacrosanct, some scripts are changeable and very malleable. It really depends. There is, again, no right way. There's no right one way of doing it. I'd definitely be on things which were branching narrative, which had a very specific script, and I definitely riffed with the script, and I was allowed to do so within a certain leeway. There have been times when I've improvised very heavily, and actually the improvisation was better. We all felt the improvisation was better off the foundation of the structure of the scene, so we ended up using the improvisation version. Sometimes I haven't changed a single word. Baldur's Gate, I don't think I improvised at all. I think there were choices of the character that were definitely wild, things that they hadn't seen coming, and things I did with the script was definitely, a lot of it was really just my choice of going, I want to do this now. That's how I see the character. But the actual words, Stephen Rooney is an incredible writer. I don't think we changed anything to do with that. So it's a real mixed bag, as it is in film and TV. Actually, I would say the best times as a director, I always feel, is when I'm wonderfully surprised by an actor's offer up of an inspiration, an idea, an impulse that is better than what is written or what I had in my head. Yeah, and if it comes from a place of not ego, but it comes from a place of them really understanding and exploring the character and being inspired in the moment with an impulse that just carries them and they follow it with bravery, 9 times out of 10 I'm going to say, yeah, well, let's do that. That was fucking great, Yeah, I love those happy accidents. But again, games are a bit more complicated, so sometimes you can't, even if you want to, you can't do it because of the mechanics. So again, pretty open, pretty mixed bag. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the technical aspects of things? So
sure.
When people think of, full motion capture and all that stuff, they're thinking suit, balls.
Suit and balls, baby.
Suit and balls.
Suit and balls.
And multiple cameras and people looking absolutely ridiculous, but clearly having the time of their life.
I can say that I think I've only ever met 1 or 2 actors, mainly female presenting, I've got to say, that look quote unquote okay in a mocap suit. Most people look stupid as fuck. It's a great leveler. You could take an A-list actor, put them in a mocap suit, they'll just look stupid. Yeah, so the way it works, there's a whole bunch of technology going into it. Again, if we're stripping it down to the basics, motion capture. These are motion capture markers. These are actually bigger than they really are. They're actually small, about half the size. These will go on joint positions usually, or around the joints, or in between joints, and they'll mark off hinge points on the body as well as the skeleton. They'll be basic. They can be as little as, I think some of the lowest I've ever heard is something like 20s or 30 markers, like around that period around that a number of markers. Anything up to like 80 markers or something crazy, like really detailed, skeletons. There's a limit to it because there's a limit to what you need. And the fewer you need, the better, quite frankly, to a point. So you shouldn't go too low, but neither should you go crazy high when it's unnecessary. That's for the body. And that goes all the way from the ankles all the way, and the feet all the way to the hands. Now, the hands are a relatively new thing in like the last 10 years, I would say. And now we have a thing called Xsense gloves, which are wireless gloves that go with the mocap suit. Or you can use just mocap markers on the back of the hands. You can also use on the fingers, maybe all of them, or just 2 of them, or 3, or like this. It really depends on the system and how people want to operate and set it up. It's very open like that. And so that's all data that's collected. Then you might have on a thing called an HMC, which is a head-mounted camera. That's like a helmet, literally like a bike helmet or something that sits on you, out of which there's usually 2 poles. There sits a camera or multiple cameras, or sometimes even the cheap kind of iPhone camera, which is literally just an iPhone carrying around capturing your face. because technology is really accelerated now. That especially indie games can do that. Obscura 33 used like MetaHuman, I think it was called. I think that's probably what it is. That's my guess anyway, because they used an iPhone for their motion capture performance. So that's become a thing now, which is pretty amazing. And you can build your own rigs. You can get them built, the rig of the HMC. Or you can buy them. They're very expensive, about 20 gold grand, which is always interesting when you break one, which doesn't happen often, but it does happen. You carry around on you a battery pack, a small computer sometimes in a pack, microphones on you, which may be on the helmet or might be, very rarely on the body, usually on the helmet or on your soft hat. That's a whole bunch of stuff that comes into it. And yeah, that's pretty much the technology. It's pretty universal. There's different types you can use. There's visuals. The optic stuff is things like Optitrack, or Vicon is the big famous one, probably the most robust and probably the best, actually, I would say, is Vicon. You can have wireless suits as well. XN suits is a wireless suit system. Not as detailed, not as precise, I would say, as optical, but very useful, especially if you're shooting in any space, like a random hall or in the wild outside. It's a little tricky to do it outside. But I've definitely shot an animal in forest as the animal, which is pretty cool. And that was in the South African forest. So there's lots of things that are possible now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so the wireless suit is like the other way. It's like the opposite. It's like you wear a suit. Inside the suit, sensors. The sensors transmit to a tower. Tower transmits to a computer, and it captures your wireless signal. Essentially, this is the premise for the actor is the same. You still move realistically, naturally. Maybe at times a little bit more. I wouldn't say animated because that will lead people down the wrong path. I like to tell people that, like theatre, you have to really move with intent. It shouldn't be arbitrary movements. It shouldn't just be like, waving around like bad soap opera television. But it should be, all movement should be done with intent, and they should be linked to character, because I feel it translates better when it does that. So yeah, so that's essentially the technology of performance capture and motion capture. Within that, optical, the way it works is that you have a highly reflective marker on you, for instance, these ones. All over your body in various positions, usually hinges. The actual volume, which can be any size from a few meters by a few meters to 20 or 30 meters with hundreds of cameras around you. The cameras are all pointed in different directions, sometimes all focused on the origin point, sometimes they're in clusters, like they're focused on certain areas, so they have as much capture volume as possible. They fire off near-infrared light continually into the volume. The volume is a three-dimensional space, obviously, which is what the stage is, essentially. And they ping off the neoprene, like wetsuit stuff, basically. The neoprene highly reflective markers, they ping back a light source. They're highly reflective. And the light source is what's captured by each individual camera, which is all fed into one system, which then creates you. You might have an ID cluster on you, on your leg, on your chest, like a little patch, with a very unique set of markers. That's an ID cluster that helps the computer further identify you as you. So if you're doing a hug, or if you get into like combat or something, it can easily maintain who is whom during a fight, and so it doesn't get lost, etc. Beyond that, it's kind of the dev side of things about tidying up the data, manipulating it a little bit to make it more reliable. Putting a rig on top. So a rig is like clothes, muscle, the shape of the animal. The neck is out here, the shoulders are up here. If it's a minotaur or a fish or something like that, that's the rig. That goes on top of the skeleton. And then on top of that, you get rendering and colors and all that kind of stuff as well. So that's essentially how that all works in a nutshell. The great thing for the actor is that once you understand that, you can sort of throw that away because it doesn't make a difference to you in some respects. Because okay, that's how it works. So I just need to feel this character, and if I can't hug myself like this because I'll obscure markers, I just know I can have to hug out. If I do a kissing scene, I know that I'm probably going to take off the HMC, put a soft cap on, kiss somebody, take that off, put the HMC back on, do the same thing again to match it up, etc., etc. So I've shot zero gravity in mocap. That was fucking awesome. That was performance capture, actually. We shot in HMCs zero gravity, and it fucking worked. So for me, that was a really cool day.
Were you on one of those planes that goes up and down, or how did they pull that off?
We pulled it off because I was a performance director. We pulled it off by using pulleys, office chairs that we hacksawed into flotation devices. I did a day workshop with all the actors to get into the movement of what zero G is really like, as in you don't actually move in slow motion. You're moving fucking normal speed because it's muscular. Your body is constantly in inertia. Because you're inertialess, your body is in motion constantly. But your arms aren't. Your whole limb structure, your eyeballs, like your lips, everything moves in normal speed. It's just that your entirety is moving and drifting in one direction or another. So we had a lot of fun, like transitioning from like sitting down, pushing up, getting that sort of movement right, to then grabbing onto something, to pushing back down into something. There was a lot of that. It was just movement work, really, combined with some hacksawed chairs. Yeah, it was called Deliver Us Mars, which I was the performance director of. It was really fun. And yeah, we had a hoot doing that. Was at Mullen there. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I am so curious if you are creating these moments and, putting together the idea of weightlessness in a place that has weight and gravity. Are there times where, besides being outside or on a set, are there times where you're in a room, a big white room or whatever color that room is, and they tell you a thing like it is, of course you would understand what this is, but it's something so hyper specific to the game that you have no context for what is about to actually happen? They're just like, all right, and you're going down a river, go. Like, is it that, or do you really know the worlds that they've created?
Speaking as myself, I always do my best work to trying to find out as much information from every developer that's on the shoot as possible. I will ask for artwork, music, even. I get them to talk at me about their work, because the thing is, developers are passionate about what they do and they're excited about what they do, so they're the best source of information. So you just get as much as you can to feed into the sort of the rehearsal instrument, as it were, to get the characters together. On the set, you're usually very supported. There's usually bios. They might even show you previs. They might even show you trailers if they have them, or even like fully rendered stuff if that's like being completed, and you can check it out, which is great for tonality and understanding the style of how they're shooting, just like you would do a film. Quentin Tarantino has a certain tonality. Wes Anderson has a certain tonality to their films. It's important to understand where their vibe is as well. That helps your performance and ground yourself into the role. And especially if there's an environment, they're usually very good about showing you the environments, making you understand what is where. That grey box over there is a tree, or this white thing over there is actually a doorway, or something like that. So, they're very good about that, which is great, because it's ultimately just want you to do the best job you can. And so they're going to be there to support you with whatever information you need. I guess, it's been a long time since I've started this work, so I don't feel nervous, really. I feel like I'm going to get fired every day I go onto set, because I just assume, like, first day, not every day, just the first day, like day one of every shoot, I'm like, they're going to fire me. It's like, that's it. Yeah. The ride is over. They're going to realize it's all a sham. It's why I'm out. That's just a silly, like, old acting insecurity. That I'm not an insecure person, but that is something that is now funny. It's like, it used to be crippling. Like, I used to be terrified of doing something wrong when I was a young actor. Now it's just a hang up, which just comes back like, you're gonna get fired. It's like, yeah, fuck off. It's like, probably not. So now it's funny, because I just assume that this is all going to hell in a handbasket, but I'm having a great time. So it's kind of an interesting one with that. What were we saying? What was saying something about mocap?
Well, is there anything that?
Oh yeah, being thrown off. Thank you. Yes. No, there hasn't actually. In 16 years, I may not have known what it was going to look like, but I always understood what the environment was. A lot of that is because of theatre training and theatre experience as well. Because in theatre, like Waiting for Godot, for instance, there'll be 2 chairs. That's it. A park bench. That's it. The rest of the world, including where the audience is, you have to create. And I think that's why I was always excited by actors that come into castings, or if I'm working with them, that have done theatre training as well as film and TV, because those cats are going to be able to imagine fucking anything. And as long as you explain it succinctly or well, or give them enough fuel and ammunition with images of the character, or images of the world, or concept art of what this city looks like, blah, 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 they will absolutely be able to take that and run with it. And they'll not only that, they'll enjoy the process of it. So for me, the theatre training that I did was invaluable for this work, because it meant that every time I was in an alien landscape and I saw one picture of it, I'd be like, totally get it. It's there. It's here. I can feel the wind. I can feel the biting radiation, or whatever the thing is that I have to deal with. You can completely imagine it. Because the other thing about acting, which I think is quite well known, it's quite well talked about, it's 6-year-old playtime. You're being a kid again. That's not even like,
You're giving away the secrets.
No, there is no fucking secret. That's the thing. Like, I hate it. I don't like gatekeeping skills. I think gatekeeping skills is one of the stupidest, suckiest things a person can do. I think if somebody gets to a point where they really know what they're doing, they have an artistic obligation to share those skills with people. It's the reason that the workshops I run a non-profit. We pay everybody, we pay the crew, we pay the studio, we pay for the expenses, but we keep it as cheap as possible. We only do 2 days, there's no leveling on it. It's just like 2 days, that's it, you're done, workshop. This is how everything works. You're in the suit and it's practical. It's Performance Capture Academy that we do. The reason we do that is because I fundamentally believe that as an artist, I would never have got as far as I have done without other artists, more experienced and possibly better than me as well, telling me advice and telling me things to think about and things to be inspired by and things not to worry about and blah, blah, blah. So I think the idea that anybody has a secret about art fucking sucks. I think it sucks. It's like, it's like when people knock different methodologies. I've tried everything. I've studied method for a long time. I studied Meisner, Laban, Jaap Malcolm's work, Commedia dell'arte, mask work, animal work, like a whole bunch of stuff, clowning. There's a whole bunch of stuff I tried and I loved and was difficult and challenging and sometimes brutal. But there is no one way. Sometimes you just need to get through the fucking door because your character needs to pee. Do you know what I mean? It's like sometimes there is no reason other than the reason the character needs to go through the fucking door. You don't need to reference your fucking effective memory from when you were 7 years old and you didn't get the candy treat and you didn't get the frog pet that you wanted.
I just really had to go.
You just need to get through the fucking door because your character needs to get through the fucking door. Sometimes you do have to do that work. Sometimes you do need to make that connection and you do need a lot of rehearsal work and you do need to give yourself some space away from other people to get in the zone, whatever that is. Abso-fucking-lutely. Sometimes you don't, you just need to get through the fucking door. And a lot of that comes to the point of, have you done your rehearsal work? Do you know your character? Have you learnt your fucking lines? I do not like it when actors, sometimes it's impossible to learn your lines because the time is crazy short. And it's really hard to learn your lines because you just don't have enough time. Fair enough. Not great, but I understand it. Sometimes when people are very blasé, I don't learn my lines because I want to keep them fresh. That's a bad actor because they're not doing their fucking work. Their work is rehearsal. Rehearsal work, creating character is part of your job, as is auditioning. Auditioning is part of your job too. It is work. Auditioning is work. Rehearsal is work. Creating your character alone somewhere and playing with ideas that when you turn up for the first day of set, you have a whole bunch of ideas, half of which may not make it. None of it may make it, but you have an idea of something. If you haven't done that, even if you've only had like a day to prepare, which does happen sometimes, you still need to come in with something. And that, for me, is the mark of a bad actor. Whether it's laziness or ego or just bad luck, which bad luck can happen, very rarely. Usually it's laziness or a bad actor or bad methodology, I would say. But I don't like it because what it means is all those golden opportunities of possibility, all those happy accidents where the actor goes, we've got it in the bag, but I've just had an idea. Can I just try something and show you? Those things are wasted because you never know. You might have them. And especially in auditions, in auditions, you don't want to be doing, I don't like doing what's on the page. Do you know what I mean? Like if they say you shout now, I'm like, will I? Probably not. Actually, I'm probably going to do something wildly different to that because I don't think I'm going to be able to feel myself shouting. I know I need to get there. I need to make, what's the why? Why is the reason that he's shouting? If I don't feel it, then I'll do something else. So the bravery is a big thing, which is to possess fear, but to carry on regardless, To be brave, to be nervous, it may not fucking work, but to do it anyway is a wonderful gift as an actor. And that is also something I'd encourage people to do. Again, I'm taking you around in strange places, Jesse. Sorry, man. I'm really going off your questions quite a lot.
It just means that you know enough to answer not just the question, but to continue the topic, which is fantastic. It's really nice to talk to someone who's like on top of their craft. That's the whole point of this show. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I worked very hard to be so.
You're in the space. I'm trying to think of what would you call the volume? Is that what you said?
The volume is the stage in which we work in.
So you're in the volume. You are recording lines. You're doing scenes.
Yep.
You are acting your heart out. And then at a certain point, you're done. You walk away. What percentage of the voice work used from those scenes where you're moving about and you're doing stuff, and I'm sure there's background noises and all sorts of things, what percentage of that is used versus having to come in later and, ADR something in or do extra voice work?
Totally depends. I mean, even sometimes you have to reshoot the performance capture. We do ADR. We do additional dialogue recording, which is basically what you do on film. When the sound quality isn't great, there's too much noises off, so you can't really hear it clearly, or you need a cleaner version. You definitely do that for games. That's quite a common thing, especially full performance capture, where there's lots of Velcro noises or something like that, or people might be, there was just like something dropped or something that you need to cover. That's very common. Again, there's no golden rule of how much you expect to do. Sometimes you have to do pretty much the entire performance because maybe the sound was really bad in the studio, for instance, or there was a major problem. Sometimes you come in and you do 2 lines, and that was off a 6-week shoot or something. Like a film, there's no knowing exactly how you're going to do that. The trick of it is that you have to get back into that headspace. That's hard. Same as film, by the way. It's, you haven't touched the project for 6 months or a year. Then you come back into a booth with a director you may not have seen since then, with people that you like but you haven't seen since then maybe, and you have to suddenly jump back into this wild fun experience you have with all these new strangers, new friends, or new acquaintances or what have you, and get back into the day that you were having in a way that was convincing enough that you can recreate the magic that you did already. Fucking hard. Probably the hardest part of the job actually is to recreate a voice recording from a previously shot scene. I think that's particularly hard. Personally, I just like to redo the entire fucking thing if I could. I'd like to shoot, not to shoot the scene. I'd like to do a full performance capture of the entire thing again if I had to do ADR for a scene. Sometimes you don't get the luxury, you just got to do it. That's fair enough. And again, it comes down to professionalism. Whether you like that or not is immaterial. If you have to do that because the production needs you to do that, you fucking do it. You can't really argue that. People make mistakes, I think, when they get insecure, and they challenge things they don't need to challenge, either because of ignorance or often I've seen, not in games so much, but maybe in film TV more, because they're really insecure about what they did, or what they're doing, or who they are, or what have you, or the process, And so they start getting into fucking strange arguments about nothingness, and they can waste a lot of time, you can do a lot of damage. You pick your battles, basically. If you have a professional problem, if there is harassment, if there is something completely unprofessional that happens to you, if you are targeted, if you're bullied or something really bad, absolutely, you need to have that fight, and you need to have, or you need to speak out, or you need to get help, or what have you. Absolutely. If it's like, your fucking trailer's not quite as big as somebody else's trailer, fuck off. It's like, who cares? Do you have a trailer? Then you are already better than 90% of the people working on this game. You have a fucking trailer. Shut the fuck up. I'm not saying actors are like that. In fact, my experience, especially in games, has been very few and far between of people that I would probably not like to work with again because they're just a bit of a pain in the ass. I would say 99.9% of the people I've worked with in 16 years, devs and actors and studio, have been fucking incredible. And that's another aspect to this side of the industry I love. It's an ensemble experience, man. You, the crew, the director, everybody's mucking in together. I fucking love it. I love the work. I love being on set. I love being in the volume. I love working with old friends and new ones. And I feel fulfilled, in not finished, but as fulfilled as I think I ever could be as a human being. I'm successful. I get to earn money to look after my family, to look after me, by doing the thing that I love to do more than almost anything on the planet. That's fucking success, Jesse.
I'm so happy for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. At the end here, I just want to give you the opportunity to not just shout out the Performance Capture Academy, but also tell people how to learn more about it, tell people, what kind of stuff you're doing there, when and how they can sign up, things like that. Take the time now and hype us up on that.
Plug the shit out of it. We've been on hiatus. I've been too fucking busy. We are coming back. We're looking to do more of our courses in the UK. We're also looking to North America as well to do a bunch of stuff there, which we will tell you when it happens. But this year went in the best possible way, completely tits up, and I got so busy that we couldn't make the academy work, which is the first time in 8 years I haven't been able to attend an academy session because I've just been too fucking busy. So it's been a wonderful time. But yes, we are coming back. We never went away. We just had to put a hiatus. So we'll be taking more courses. It'll still be at non-profits. It'll still be a break-even point for the costs of the putting them on. There may be slight inflation issues, obviously, because we can't control the people's costs. But essentially, what people were paying in the past is more or less what people will still pay. We're doing in UK, possibly in Europe at some point, North America in various places, definitely. And look out for our website, performancecapturedacademy.com. Join our mail list. Sorry if we don't get back to you straight away. Again, we're a bit overwhelmed at the moment. But we go through everybody. We make sure that everybody gets on the mail list that asks, so they can get first dibs on the courses. That's about it. Yeah.
Neil, thank you again for taking the time to talk with me.
No worries, man. It's nice to speak to you
pick
again.
your brain on this.
Yeah, glad to help.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you again. Thanks so much.
Pleasure, man. See you later, Jesse. Bye.